You're watching Georgia Alert. I'm Becca, and today I'm here with Tini and Marika. Hello.
Hello.
Today we will be speaking about the highlights of the Georgian news. And today the major event that has happened here is that the opposition parties have signed the Declaration of Unity. Unity has been a theme of recent events on the Georgia side, that first of all Georgia is qualifying for the football and that has united Georgia big time, but from the political perspective also it has been a big move from the opposition parties that they have signed the Declaration of Unity. As stated in their statement, the signing of Declaration of Unity implies unity both before and after the parliamentary elections. In addition, according to them, the parties will agree on the most effective configuration of unity no later than July 8th. We are concerned about the recent attacks of Georgian Dream led by the oligarch Bidzina Ivanishvili, as well as the actions of the government, which obeys the same oligarch and ignores the basic values of democracy and deliberately hinders Georgia's aspirations to join the European Union and NATO. We are talking about the Georgian Charter and the goals of the Charter as presented by the President Salome Zurabishvili. We announced that we will unite before the upcoming elections and after the elections in the Parliament of Georgia to achieve the following goals: to remove Bidzina Ivanishvili from the rule of the state oligarchy and its enslaved party Georgian Dream, to return Georgia to the path of rapid integration into the European Union. This has been the declaration from the opposition parties, and we have been all of us waiting for this move from the opposition to unite and to prepare for the upcoming parliamentary elections as a unity. And 6 parties have signed this declaration. The first was the signification of charter from the opposition parties. 16 parties were signatory members of this charter, and now we have officially 6 opposition parties who have signed this union so let's discuss this unity, and I think this is a good move, strategically a sound move from the Georgian opposition, and let's discuss this quickly.
I'm very happy today because we've been waiting for some kind of deadline for Georgian opposition parties to somehow have an agreement to what will the configuration be for the upcoming elections. And today, even though it's not the unity that they have signed, they said that on July 8th it will be a deadline when we will announce what will be the configuration. And the whole society is waiting for that because they need to know what they're voting for, if not Georgian Dream. And this is very good move. I believed that EU's interference and EU's talks with the opposition would help this to go faster, and it really helped for Georgian opposition members. And this is a very good start. And from this, now they can discuss what will go on and who will be joining who.
Yes, it's definitely a great development. It's been dubbed by the media as some sort of a follow-up to the Georgian Charter by the president, in a good sense, in a positive sense. Yes, first of all, it doesn't imply a technical unity. It's a unity in the vision. Yes, it's good that we finally have a deadline of when we will know for sure what configuration is offered to the voters for the elections, and that's July 8. It's essentially an agreement not to lash out at one another and to keep the focus on the Georgian Dream, to counter election rigging attempts together and Georgian Dream's propaganda. As it's written in the Unity Declaration, to ensure that Georgian voters abroad are equipped with adequate voting. And there's also a plea to our friends and partners like OSCE, Council of Europe, and others to send a long-term rigorous pre-election observation missions to Georgia. And that's very important. Other than that, also to agree on a single candidate for presidency, because the president's term will be over pretty quickly after the October elections. And since there's no direct elections of the president anymore, and the president will be elected by the parliament and the local government councils, then there remains some risk that the Georgian Dream could, in theory, still have their president installed, and that's problematic, of course, for further reforms, even though the president doesn't have much powers. So that's important. Yes, I would focus on the cooperation, not attacking each other, to put the focus on the Georgian Dream. There's also a pledge that no one will form a government with the Georgian Dream, and that's also very important. And there's particular importance on the pre-election campaign. And yes, I cannot stress enough how important and crucial it is for our friends and partners to realize that it's necessary, because the Georgian Dream does not rig elections on their election day per se, but they have the months of heavy manipulations with pressure, intimidation, vote buying, and so on. Yes.
Yes, in 2 weeks approximately we will have a more clear picture of this unity, and they have different perspectives. I mean, they different aspects of this unity. The importance is, at first, yes, we have the upcoming election, the parliamentary election, and this is done strategically because to save every vote, to make sure that the votes are not lost because of the system, the legislation of yes. Also, not only it's about the election, but afterwards, yes, you mentioned correctly that we are currently in the era of the last elected president by the people. Salome Zurabishvili will be the last electoral president. Afterwards, after the parliamentary election, the new president will be, they call it elected, but this is appointed by the parliament and the members of the government. Basically, it will be appointed. So it is important to have the unity after the elections as well, to peddle democracy further, and also the candidacy of prime minister is dependent upon these elections, the parliamentary elections. So there are a lot of aspects, different key points for Georgian democracy that requires unity from the opposition. So this is great that the parties are coming together despite the differences, despite their ideologies, whatever the issue there may be. We are fundamentally in a political crisis which requires unity. To solve this dilemma, we have this mechanism of unity, and yes, Georgia is a young democracy and we have a lot to learn from our Western partners, but we have also some experience in battling tyranny, in overthrowing governments, and in previous elections in 2003, we also had a similar unity from the opposition. So this is a good sign. When the opposition unites against a single cause, this eventually leads to changes and it eventually leads to better future. So let's hope this unity will have results. And in 2 weeks' time we will have more things to say.
Yes.
And let's continue on EU, because this week I think in EU the main topic alongside with Ukraine has been Georgia as well. And on 24th of June in Luxembourg, EU Foreign Affairs Council meeting was held, where the main topic alongside with Gaza and Ukraine, they have discussed Georgia. And Joseph Borrell, after the meeting, he was very strict with Georgian government, and he mentioned that this is not the Georgian government is taking Georgia away from EU, and that this is downgrade political situation in Georgia for Georgians, and that this is not what we need for EU, and if government will not change the course of action, Georgia will not progress on its European path. Today, Moldova and Ukraine started negotiations, and we're not part of it. And we all know why we're not part of it, because Georgian government keeps taking us back to the authoritarian regime, and we're going back from the EU. And this week's EU's session was very good, in a sense that they were very clear on what is happening here in Georgia, and it was brought to a new level, which is European Foreign Affairs ministries. So that was on June 24th, and after that there was also. There was, let me see, John Bass.
Yes.
Who also had a statement on Twitter, yeah? Maybe you continue.
Yes, of course. So John Bass is now acting Under Secretary of State for Political Affairs, and he was previously the U.S. ambassador to Georgia. So he knows Georgia quite well, and he stated that it's very regrettable that the aspirations of Georgians and Georgia in general are held hostage by one person, Bidzina Ionishvili. And it's extremely important that this has been voiced, because we have been saying the same, and we have been trying to communicate this to our friends and partners for years, and such clear messages, I cannot emphasize enough how important it is for Georgian public to receive such clear messages, because if there's ambiguity, if there's any more polished talks, then people get the feeling that somehow with some loopholes it could still be possible to proceed with European integration, and they feel less urgency. But with such clear messages, the urgency is there, and most Georgians react to it positively. I mean, in a way that democracy requires. Also, Borrell's statement: yes, the EU will downgrade high-level visits and relations with Georgia. Also, financial aid will be suspended, including military. But on the other hand, Borrell also said that the relations with civil society will intensify, and they will aid the electoral process and democratic process in Georgia. Actually, I didn't fully understand whether it's effective immediately, or whether they will further observe.
As he said, it can be done immediately. Yeah. However, they're still looking at the situation, how it will continue, and they will make a decision afterwards.
And he said additional measures can be taken. So since he mentioned additional, I'm thinking, is this already in effect?
Maybe.
So I'm a little confused.
Today, actually, he just posted on Twitter, Borrell, that EU is observing Georgia.
Okay. So it's still in the process.
Yes.
So they are watching closely. They understand that the Georgian government is taking Georgia away from EU, but they stand with Georgian people. And basically they are still have not made any firm decisions yet.
Yeah.
But they will see how the situation is.
However,
that's great.
Like when we talk about propaganda, that's how Georgian government's propaganda works. They will, they tell their supporters that yes, EU says bad things about Georgia's democracy, but still they're the ones who are contacting us. They're inviting us, and we still have the relations. So that's why this message was very important for Georgians Georgian dream that it will be stopped unless you stop taking Georgia to the Russian regime. So it's very important for EU to finally make that decision if they're
yes, and it was actually quite amusing in a good sense. The Borrell said, "I can say it louder but not clearer." About the fact that these policies of Georgian government, they do not bring Georgia to European Union, and quite the contrary, they bring Georgia away from the European Union. So yes, he could say it louder but not clear, and that's really important. Another thing, the Georgian government, they usually underline that sanctions by the United States is okay as long as they have Europe. So I do hope that some measures will be taken in that regard. Although I understand that other measures that do not require unanimity for various reasons are more top in the list of EU measures. Yes.
EU had recently just released the 14th package of sanctions against Russia. So these sanctions are being updated on a yearly basis, so and it keeps growing and growing. For Georgia, when it comes to Georgia, they have not shut this door on us. They still see that Georgian people have different perspective from their government. That's why Georgia hasn't been sanctioned like Belarus or Russia at the moment, because in Russia, the people do not stand against the government as much as we have made it clear to the Europeans. So they understand the situation is different when it comes to Georgia or Belarus or Russia. Georgian people are different type of people. We do not take our government's decision as granted, and we don't stand aside. That's why I think EU has given further chances to Georgian
people,
this is to the benefit of Georgian people. But when it comes to diplomacy, the politics, they will have their say against the politicians, and they will. This is one of the changes that they might just stop communicating with them. They might not even recognize them as the legitimate leaders of the country, and I think they should do so, because as the new opposition arises, new unity, new political players will emerge out of this unity, and yes, Georgia will have legitimate leaders who align their interests with the country's interest and not their own private interests. So yes, the situation is moving along. And speaking about the ambassadors, the president also had a message to Georgian ambassadors who are currently in Europe, in Berlin. They have been gathered there by Prime Minister Irakli Kobakhidze for a conference, and all of the Georgia's ambassadors to Europe and United States are there. President Zurabishvili expressed regret that she was not given the opportunity to address the ambassadors in person, but she said that she is considering it necessary to deliver this message. You are in the middle of Europe, and you are listening to lies that our European voyage seemingly continues. The president went on to say that all European leaders she met last week at the Ukraine Peace Summit in Switzerland were surprised to hear from the government that Georgia will become the EU member anyway, despite passing Russian laws, despite failing to accept any recommendations and not fulfilling any reform necessary to walking on this path to EU membership. Complementing the professional work done by the Georgian diplomats to advance this far, she said, what is happening now is a betrayal of professionalism, betrayal of those people who, starting from the first days of independence and even before, were dreaming about this European path. President Zurabishvili said she wants to believe that diplomats remain faithful to their beliefs, and stressed ambassadors representing Georgia, especially in the European Union, are not in the usual situation, are not usual civil servants, and have a higher responsibility as they represent their country and not any government. The governments come and go. You represent the country, its interests, its past and its future. I'm not going to lecture you or make any suggestions. I want to say that Georgia's ordinary citizens will be facing extraordinary choices on October 26th, the parliamentary elections. But for you, the time to choose is now. This was the message from the president of Georgia, Zurabishvili, to the ambassadors.
And one of the ambassadors resigned, and we thought that it was because of the political situation, but his statement was kind of different, so it was not quite about political situation and not agreeing with Georgian Dream, but one of them has resigned last week.
Oh, okay. But I thought he posted Together Towards Europe, so that's why I thought he...
Together Towards Europe, it's like...
no, but
either way...
It's one of the slogans of the demonstrations. Where are we headed to Europe?
Because people thought differently.
Yeah, so we don't have full picture.
Yeah, we don't have the full picture of what, because it was just one statement. After that, we haven't
actions
heard anything.
Speak louder than words. So the fact.
But the fact that he resigned, yes.
Yes.
And also in this week we had Vilnius ALDE Council meeting where two of Georgian political parties have become the members. Drua has become the affiliate member of ALDE, and Girchi More Freedom upgraded to full membership. To remind our viewers, ALDE is the second largest political group in European Union, and they have liberal parties from across the Europe, and they bring our country's important topics to the European level, and that's why it's very important for us to get into ALDE so that they can lobby our interests. For this council meeting, there was an urgent resolution offered by, and it was very good that usually Georgian political parties, they are the ones who are writing resolutions on Georgia, but this time European countries were the ones who initiated to write a resolution on Georgia. So this resolution is ALDE condemns the authoritarian and anti-European turn in Georgia, and ALDE calls on the EU and European countries to impose travel bans and financial sanctions on Georgian Dream leaders and officials, the ones who are the initiators of the Lashin law, and the law enforcement as well, who have been involved in physical assaults against peaceful citizens, and also to implement personal sanctions against Bidzina Ivanishvili and his family. And also for me, and it continues with Borrell's statement, it was very important for me that ALDE calls on EU leaders to distance themselves from the leaders of the Georgian Dream to prevent propaganda manipulation by the Georgian Dream. So yes, this is one of the important documents that ALDE is going to lobby in the European level, and hopefully it will give us some of the consequences, which is sanctions and not talking to Georgian government. Yes, it's very important that Georgian parties have more Georgian parties have become part of ALDE, because now we can lobby our ideas and our important issues to the European level even more. And yes, this was a very important topic for us.
Yes, and Trova is also very happy to be affiliate members at ALDE. We see ALDE as champions of this liberal democratic values-based international order, which is crucial now for the world, and it's our honor to be part of the ALDE family. And we hope we can also contribute, not just receive benefits, but also contribute to ALDE family and liberalism in Europe. Hopefully soon in our lifetime, and in next 10-15 years, not just lifetime, but as quickly as possible, we can also see Georgian parties represented in the European Parliament. under the Renew group, and not just the Renew group, but other parties as well. Yeah.
Let's move on to the next topic.
Yes, so there's this geopolitical issue with the Russian law. So the Russian law means this foreign agents law, which requires from non-government organizations in Georgia to register as foreign agents if they receive at least 20% of funding from abroad. The issue here is that the word agent in Georgian means a spy, and also there's no local funding available for NGOs in Georgia, because the only person who is confident in his wealth and only business confident in wealth is the Bidzina Ivanishvili, the oligarch behind all of this. And with no independent courts and the justice system, all businesses are afraid to fund dissenting opinion, or even just community work in Georgia, just in case, because government could arbitrarily shut down their business anytime. So for that reason, most NGOs in Georgia depend on Western money. And if you are labeling them as foreign agents, if they receive Western funding, then that means that you are calling the Western enemy, because why would taking funds from a friend be a problem, right? So there are multiple layers of issues with this law, but currently I want to say a few words about its geopolitics. Last week, U.S. Helsinki Commission had a briefing on the proliferation of this Russian-style foreign agents laws in the region. It was about Kyrgyzstan, Georgia, Hungary, and Slovakia. And so in Georgia, stakes are now quite high, because with these unprecedented protests and unprecedented support from the West, with the travel bans and all the rhetoric from the United States and the European Union, and now European Union also considering steps against the Georgian government, and also to cut aid to Georgia as a country, stakes are really high, meaning if Georgian protests and Georgian civil society is defeated right now, then other civil societies in other countries in the wider region, especially the EU enlargement region, the Western Balkans, for example, they will have significant difficulties, because the illiberal regimes, or emergent illiberals, or future illiberal governments in the enlargement countries, they will feel quite confident that they will not pay any significant political costs if they adopt illiberal laws that suffocate democracy and civil liberties in their countries. And civil society will have a very bad precedent with Georgia, that no effort was enough. Yes, it's very indicative that in Republika Srpska, which is in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and they are this pro-Russian Serb separatist entity with President Milorad Dodik. A day after presidential veto on the foreign agents law was overridden in Georgia, he said that they would be withdrawing their bill on foreign agents law until further notice. So I'm pretty sure that he will be observing very closely what political cost the Georgian Dream will pay, and act accordingly. So if Georgian Dream is not defeated, then he will bring this law back. Also in the Parliament of Serbia, they start to discuss this law. As we already know, it's already in place in Kyrgyzstan, and some versions of this law is being adopted in Slovakia. It's already in place in Hungary with a different name, sovereignty protection. And yes, so I'm pretty sure that Russia sees Georgia as the gatekeeper now of civic liberties around the region, and if democracy is defeated in Georgia, it's a really bad precedent for other countries, especially in the enlargement area. And I would also like to mention Armenia. for which Georgia is the only connection to the outside, to the Western world, because they have border with Turkey closed, and only through Georgia and the Black Sea they are connected with the Western world. And right now, Armenia's security as a state depends quite heavily on the French weapons procurement, because the CSTO, this Russian alliance, they failed to act as allies, so Armenia will be leaving CSTO. So it depends largely on Georgia and Georgia's territory and airspace. What happens in Armenia in terms of security development, and if Russia consolidates itself in Georgia, then the entire security of Armenia will depend on the Russian will and mercy, whether we like allow some transfer there, but also democracy there, because if Georgia is a consolidated autocracy, then democracy in Armenia cannot flourish out of nowhere, bordering Iran and other states where there are some problems of democracy. So what happens in Georgia will not stay in Georgia.
Exactly.
It will be a big spillover into other countries. So that's why, once again, everyone should do everything possible to ensure transparency with these elections, and that the will of the Georgian public is reflected properly.
And basically we know that how Russia tests things in the region. That's how it happened in 2014 when he tested the Crimea. And since there was no like hard statements from the EU and the USA, he thought that it would be like that for the Ukrainian war as well. And that's how he started the war. And that's what he's doing here in the region. He's testing if Russian law works here in Georgia, and if there is no consequences from the EU and the USA, it might be done in another countries as well. And in another countries, I mean by in another countries, it means that it's very close to Europe. So Europe might get a threat from Russian propaganda as well, and Russian regime.
Yes, definitely.
Yes, the Russian law has been discussed on Helsinki Commission in details. Not only this law, entire Georgian politics have been observed closely, and yes, we have become quite the example for other countries. They are watching us, and at the moment, not only Georgia's foreign orientation is being tested, but democracy itself is at stake. Will the Georgian democracy prevail against authoritarianism? Will the people declare and choose their own faith themselves, or will some political gang of politicians overtake the entire country? That is at stake here. Also, of course, there are foreign interests, there are Russian interests here, of course, and on this Helsinki Commission, this law has been compared to Kyrgyzstan, to Hungary, to Slovakia. They're also watching Georgian politics, of course, and Russia, of course, is advancing its interests, and they want to move closer and closer to Europe ultimately. But there have been quite accurate points on this Helsinki Commission spoken, that Mitchell, the analyst who spoke on this committee,
Mitchell.
he underlined the situation in Georgian politics at the moment. There are he asked this question: why would you prepare or lay the foundations for stealing the elections that you were going to win anyway? So there is this discussion in Georgian politics that before the Russian law, Georgian dream was going to win the polls anyway. So why did they even prepare this bill for the elections? That's an interesting question. He highlighted that the electoral divide in Georgia is within Georgia. There are groups who are elderly people. They support the non-speaking generation. Basically, they have been fed the anti-Western propaganda, and they are the supporters of GD. And the other part of Georgia, the English-speaking part, they have basically more connection to the entire world. They understand the real information. They have more discernment of the truth, and they are opposed to the ruling party. Also, there have been discussions about the sanctions, the effectivity of sanctions, that suggesting that while these sanctions or GD officials could be impactful, those targeting billionaire Bidzina eventually might be less effective due to his wealth. Well, this could be disagreeable because it's not only about financial sanctions, but their family members are being also sanctioned. So these sanctions will be impactful. Whether financial or not, yes, it
That's
goes
why
beyond.
Bidzina's daughter
Yes.
changed her name. Like they were expecting that some kind of sanctions would come, and they got scared of it. That's why they took actions. If they didn't take actions, yeah, I would believe
Yes.
that it's not impactful. But they already are in they're in crazy situation when they
For
need
financial
to.
sanctions, I think they're prepared already. That they can, they have adopted another law, basically the offshores law, as it's called, that they are going to import their wealth into Georgia in case they are being sanctioned in Europe
Yes.
without the
Fees. Theirs and also any potential Russian oligarchic money, and not just theirs, all their friends and all the network. And it's been suggested that Russia cannot afford to lose the governance in Georgia right now, also because they're using Georgia as a money laundering and like a safe hub for their money. Which they need in the world right now. So they cannot afford to lose Georgia in so many levels, for various reasons. Not least so because Georgian Dream is the last Russian government in Georgia. And sometimes when I say this, others they find this a very unrealistic or loud statement, but it really is so, because even these guys, they were never elected as pro-Russians, and what helped them consolidate power is this wicked electoral system, which is when you gain less than 50%, you still have the entire parliament, this mixed proportional representation, like half proportional, half majoritarian. So that's not the case anymore, will hopefully never be the case anymore. And in proportional representation, no single party will really have a majority. So even less so any party that has questionable credentials in terms of foreign policy, especially now that Georgian public will be very immune to these issues. Before, there used to be this false sense of security and illusion of security that whatever the problems of the government might have been, no government in Georgia would dare change the country's foreign vector because the population is so overwhelmingly pro-European. So whenever there were some problems with the Georgian Dream, some people would brush it off, even in the political class, because they would think that okay, there are problems, but overall Georgia will still remain on the EU path, because they could not imagine that a government would contradict 85% of the population that much. And as for the rural population and the elderly or people who don't speak English that Mr. Lincoln Mitchell was referring to, actually, even in that segment, preference for the European Union is quite high. So this European Union versus Russia debate is not really a thing in Georgian politics. The Georgian Dream tries to portray as if it is, but it's not. The problem here is the channeling of this sentiment. So oftentimes, those who support the European Union, they lack the tools to analyze that the Georgian dream is not delivering that European promise. So they might support European Union, but have trouble understanding why the Georgian dream is not a European party, especially before this Russian law and before the statements that are so clear from European Union and the United States. So yes, again, in Georgia, virtually everyone wants European integration.
Yeah.
Problem is channeling and party support.
And I don't think that what Mr. Mitchell said about Georgian Dream winning elections, I don't think that it was the case. Of course, yeah, they would have much higher percentage in that case before Russian law, but still they have noticed that Georgian youth are more active. They become interested in politics, and they have tested that Georgian Dream supporters are not young people. And this law targets especially young people, so that's why they came with this law. I think that they wanted to keep the power, and this year might have been, because from 2020 till 2024 there are lots of young people who have not yet voted. So that's what Georgian Dream got scared of, that there might be a campaign in 2024 when Georgian youth starts actively to be interested in politics and get more involved. So I personally believe that's what they got scared of.
Yeah, well, I personally believe it was a direct Kremlin order with little regard to. I mean, one does not exclude the other.
Exactly.
Yes, what you're saying is absolutely right as well. But I think the bigger share is the Kremlin push, because again, this proliferation of these laws at the same time is no coincidence. What I meant to say is that I think their fear of the youth could not, in my opinion, is not sufficient to cause this enactment of the Russian law. It's just my opinion. So, of course, there are various factors. So, for example, to shut down monitoring NGOs, election monitoring NGOs, and yeah, but I would not downgrade the Kremlin's direction.
I think that's a good question that Mitchell asked, but he forgets one thing, that this has been a strategy previously also been tried. They tried this strategy 1 year ago to implement this Russian law, and at that point they did not have as much necessity for it as they have this year, because we have the election year this year. Last year there was not as much pressure on CSOs as it is for this year, and to really see the facts is that this is a move against dissenting opinions. They are for sure planning to win the election this year. They've been planning this last year. They want to stay in power, but they still want to appear as democratic leaders of the country. In the foreign land, they want to be legitimate leaders, and that's why they do not want the CSOs, they don't want the public to speak the truth against them, to have dissenting opinions. So they are trying to shut down every opposition channel, every web page that calls them the oligarchs, that calls them, yes, their real names, and they would rather play this chess. On one hand, they want to appear as like white knights of democracy, and when they go on voyages in Europe, they are like speaking from the point of young democratic republic. And on the other hand, they are in bed with Russians. They're using their methods to keep their authoritarian regime, and they're getting the messages from them, basically, on how to keep and run the authoritarian regime. The signs are similar. Every authoritarian republic uses the same methods. Just keep away the journalists and silence them. No CSOs. Implement the laws which basically cut off the funding, and this is the strategy. So the Mitchell should yes, take into consideration that this is not just about winning the election. This is after the election, they don't want the dissenting opinions.
Exactly.
So they did not expect, I think, the GD did not expect this much of a push from the society, that simply we will not have this reality.
I want to mention one thing, because it's very important and none of the opposition parties talk about it. It's about schools. Georgian Dream tries to silence those organizations and everyone, but they treat Georgian schools very perfectly, because they are the ones who are supporting them. But this week they have announced that they will Georgian teachers' salary will increase. However, this thing happened. For the last 10 years, Georgian teachers, they had different kind of exams, and they have become more qualified. They had tests about English, about computer, and different kinds of stuffs, and they have become more qualified. However, Georgian Dream, they decreased these people's salary, but those people were on the exams because they wanted to have bigger salary. They decreased those people's salary, but other 50,000 teachers who have never gone to the exam to qualify themselves, their salaries have increased. So it's one of the techniques. Yeah, that's one of the techniques. Actually, Georgian teachers could not understand what was happening, but after all, they have counted everything and they have analyzed it, and now they have made a Facebook group, more pro-Western and better teachers who are like on the right side of the history, their salaries have become less, but other teachers who are 60 plus, their salaries have increased. So this is one of the techniques that we are always talking about, that rigging doesn't happen before at the election day. This is one of the techniques that Georgian Dream uses to gather all the votes from the teachers who were still born in Russia, in the Soviet Union, who are not very active and are not on Facebook and don't know English and that kind of stuff, but they try to decrease the motivation of teachers who are more pro-Western, and they post about these protests and no to Russian law on Facebook. So now there is a big Facebook group where lots of teachers have joined, and they are protesting it, and they might be one of the groups for the elections that might be very good for us, for the opposition, and for the Georgian people.
If I may add, Becca, you mentioned that the Georgian Dream did not expect such a position. Well, first of all, they did not expect in March 2023 such a punchback from the people, because historically Georgians have been very timid protesters. Georgian protests are never violent, and even just the level of violence in Georgian society is, what we perceive as violence is not perceived as violence elsewhere, because there's such a small society and so on. Last year, even encircling the parliament and, like, let's say, besieging or whatever, that was a problem, and people were afraid. People were thinking that even that wasn't legitimate from them, and they didn't want to give the government reasons to call the protests violent or anyway. So traditionally, Georgian protesters wouldn't even breathe too loud.
Exactly.
But last year, when they began a crackdown on people, when this Russian law was adopted at the first hearing, suddenly people punched back really hard, and we saw that the car was put on fire, and this self-organization and the barricades that people put up. I'm absolutely sure that it was not in the Kremlin playbook of Georgian national character, and they didn't expect it from Georgians, and that's why they backed off, because they realized that this no to Russian law would soon become no to Russian government, and if they didn't back off, then it would like spiral out of control completely, because they didn't expect what the people gave back to them. And this year, it's so, I don't know if he actually believes that, or if he wants us to believe this, but when Bidzina Ivanishvili said that I'm bringing this law now back because whatever energy you could spend around October, I'm making you spend the energy now, and I'm making you tired now. And does he really think that it's mathematics, that we're out of energy and then we will forever stay home after this spring, or what is it?
I think that it's because of the propaganda. For example, last year's and this year's protests was quite different, even though both of them we were very angry and the government feared us. Last year was more intense for us than this year. Even though this year we got more violence from the government, people were kind of somehow like scared because of the last year's things. Last year they started working on this propaganda right after the protests. They arrested Lazare, and Lazare was the face of the whole protesters. And after this year, I haven't seen the police car got fired because this year people were more. That's what I think Bidzina thinks, that on these people propaganda will work. They will arrest some people, they will attack some people, they will beat up some people, and then people will start to act differently. Of course, it's not gonna work because we get more angry, and that's what Russian propaganda does not realize, and Georgian Dream doesn't realize, that when they do violent things, it gets even more bad for them because we're more angry. And if they don't act on it, it's not that bad.
Yeah, I think also on Twitter/X, some people have been saying that Georgians are too peaceful for this movement to succeed, actually. And I'm always responding that, well, I believe in this, that we've always had this mental deadline of October in our head. So that's why I think the anger in the streets was relatively less than probably many of our friends expected, because we still hope that maybe through elections we will have the chance to like outvote them in a velvet way and in a bloodless way. Yes, so that's it.
Yeah, the last year's protests were intense, but I think this year's protests were unprecedented by the numbers.
Exactly.
Even the propaganda drones. There was a funny moment where the drone suddenly showed the reality of how many people.
Yeah, from TV Medit.
Yes. Even the drones could not hide the reality. So this year, I don't think they expected this much angry people, even non-activists, even people who don't really care about politics, they were on the streets protesting this. So that's the difference between last year and this year's
I think there's also difference in their response, not just... I wouldn't say that we were more timid or afraid this year. Actually, I don't have this feeling. I observe more that Georgian Dream's response was different, because they tried to not have 2 consecutive days of crackdowns on Rustaveli proper. So they did crackdowns in the back side of the parliament, but like last year on March 7 and March 8, there were 2 consecutive days of a major crackdown on Rustaveli proper that affected all people that were protesting. Now they tried to use violence, but not on the scale that would explode people, you know. So they were like, they were trying to manage also, I think, the public anger in that regard, because they didn't want it to get out of hand, I think. So, so in a way, like they had this. How to say, they were definitely violent, but they tried to not for the public not to reach the level that would
like
cost
it was
them
last year. And
Yes.
I remember from this year, my friend was telling me we had like two different pictures. In front of the parliament, people were listening to music, and on the
That's
back
what
side,
I mean. That's what I mean.
On the back side, we were running away from the riot.
That's exactly what I mean. The main public is in front of the parliament because the capacity there is much higher. So they used violence, but they tried not to make the main public super angry, at least for 2 days in a row. Because last year it was 2 days of very major, large-scale crackdown.
Yeah, it was not just activists who were targeted.
Well, now it weren't just activists either, but I think I think that they also adjusted their methods in crackdowns.
I think this year has been a reality check for the GD because last year they saw that the UNM, the opposition party, they had them beat basically by the numbers, but the real opposition was coming from CSOs, actually the political activists who were not the members of parliament. So they saw threat in the CSOs, so they moved against them to silence them, the CSOs. Now, this year, they have seen that they're in minority actually. They're not in majority anymore. They have organized their own demonstration. They bought people there with money, with their own transportation.
Recorded applause.
Recorded applause. They did not have enough supporters amongst their own people.
They didn't have
to
trust.
applause.
They didn't have trust that they would actually applaud.
And we saw the actual numbers that they shut off the electricity in the parts of the area where they have gathered them, that they did not have the numbers, not the support, not the authenticity and intensity of their supporters. They are in minority. They see this now clearly. Last year they had maybe they believed that they were in majority, that they called everyone else, oh, they are not savvy, they are like opposition, they are the extremist groups. Now they have become the extremist groups who are leading the country in treacherous roads, and the majority is against them. This is the reality check that they have seen this year.
Yes, and one more point, and I think I'll be done with this, because before it was the opposition that would bring people with buses from provinces, because Tbilisi used to be GD's stronghold, and now Tbilisi is even their own former stronghold protesting, and they have to bring people with buses from the regions. Yeah,
the tables have turned.
And I think we have one last news, and maybe we're done.
Yes, well, let's mention Georgian football. Without it, it would be a shame that Georgians are playing on the European Championship of 2024. This is the first time that Georgia has qualified for such an international competition, and the politics have also been involved quite a lot in football. The team members of Georgia's football team, they are outspoken members of the society despite their football careers. They have their own political opinions. They have stated these opinions out loud on Facebook and other social platforms, and there is a strong belief that because of their political opinions, they're being basically, they're not given enough. Yes, that they are benched. They are not given any play
mostly
time.
about Butu.
Yes, the most outspoken person against the current situation in Georgian politics. He has been benched without any explanation. He has played 0 minutes. Also, previously to his benching, he has basically been, I don't know, he deleted all his previous posts from the media. The media was asked to delete his posts.
He asked the media.
Yes, so he was pressured from the leadership basically just to keep quiet. And the best way they found this quieting him is to bench him, basically. So this is not a affecting Georgia's team well.
Yeah.
He's an attacking player, and we need to score. We need to score goals, and yeah, we are having problem in that department. But still, the Georgian team is performing on a high level. We are competing against stronger teams, but we are showing strength. But at the same time, it's obvious that politics has certain hold over these decisions of our coach. And yes, this
is very sad.
Has to be addressed.
And generally, it's very good that not politicians, sportsmen may act on a political situation. May act, I mean, like may post something about it and express their ideas, but it should not affect how they're gonna play and who's gonna play. So we've seen that in Europe there are lots of footballers who actively express their political views on social medias, but they're not being targeted by the coaches and football teams because of their political ideologies. And in this case, it was not just, that's why we believe that it was political decision. It was not just Budu who said anything. It was Budu's father who said that he doesn't know what is going on. He doesn't have a clear answer, and probably people who are professional at football, they might answer. So even his father doesn't know the decision, why was it made, and probably it's even Budu, probably even he doesn't know why it happened, and so on. We know that Georgian Dreams official, Akhtaladze, who is a mayor of Tbilisi, he was a football player before, and we know that he has a very good ties with Football Federation in Georgia. So that's what people believe, that his ties really worked in Football Federation, and because Budu was very active during the protest, and he used to post and he used to stand with Georgian people, that's why they benched him and didn't let him to play.
Well, yeah, I hope to see Budu next game with Portugal. But I wanted to add a different angle as well. For me, the football team and the national spirit are now intertwined. In my opinion, because when we qualified for Euro 2024, I don't really watch football that much, but from people who are experts and who have observed the transformation of the Georgian team, they have been saying that the Georgian team, they became much more disciplined and overcame these bad aspects of Georgian character, like relying on luck or like not being disciplined and so on. And they worked very hard also in researching their opponents. I think they said that they knew a lot about the players of Greece, which we defeated when we qualified. So it seems to me that character of the football team got much more efficient and resilient, and also the character of the Georgian public who protested this much, and no one, especially Georgians themselves, didn't expect that we would endure so much and we would be so persistent. And the only reason we stopped protesting is not because we gave up, but because we shifted our focus to the elections. So this football's transformation of character and the society's transformation of character, for me, it's a proof that we are becoming a resilient, like hard-working society, and I believe deeply that we are able to build a really great country as soon as we get rid of this Russian menace that is the Georgian dream. And also, it's been for that reason, for the intertwining of football and national spirit. It's always very emotional that the protesters share songs, and like main songs of the protest are often those that are played at football matches and football songs.
Yeah, that's why I always say that we kind of trained for the football when we won, and when we qualified for the EU, and that's when the Russian law thing started. So
Okay.
Georgian Dream, it's even worse than during that time when all of us were united. That's when they introduced the Russian law back. But we trained this victory so much that we took this into the street protests.
Exactly, it's very interesting. Yes, people were furious that we were finally happy United Nations for once, and that is when the Russian law was back. And I think we took the spirit to the streets. You're right, and another factor is the commentators. So we had a penalty shootout when we qualified, and it was dependent on the last penalty. And when we scored, the commentator, he said, yes, the dream has been achieved, the mission has been achieved, Georgia in Europe and Georgia's team in Euros. So it was one more proof that we didn't see it just as a tournament. It was, everything is intertwined in Georgia football, tournament, European identity, resistance to the Russian law, and
especially
all of this.
now, everything is happening at the same time.
Yes.
The Euros,
Yes.
yes, it was not a coincidence. I think
Yes.
it was, yes.
And maybe we can mention other football players also, because so when the Russian law thing started, the football players started the challenge of posting about the Russian law, and some of them were very, very clear. For example, Budu, but there were some of them who wrote something, but it was not quite clear what they were for, and their message box was very close to Georgian Dream's message box. And now those football players, they have been seen with Bidina Ivanishuli's son, and this also took another disagreement with Georgian society. Some of them are like, why should you post a picture with Bidina Ivanishuli's son? But yeah, it's like some of the football players are more outspoken, and some of them, they might have different ideologies, and it's okay if they do. But Georgian people judge them not just by their skills, but also by their ideas and by their support to Georgian people.
These recent events have shown that football and politics cannot be separated, especially now. But I want to express one opinion that this, on one hand, is a good point. Yes, that the people are united. We have common goals. We look towards Europe with hopes. But on the other hand, this is horrible for Georgian ruling party, because when everything is politicized, every aspect of human life is politicized. This is called totalitarianism, basically.
Yeah.
And this is already a diagnosis that there is a problem, there is a sickness in this ruling party, that they have been ruling with the methods of authoritarian regimes, basically. And when everything is politicized, when even taking a picture with a political leader's son is deemed by the public as a betrayal of honor, as disgrace, and so on, this is a problem for them as well. We should all want a country where we can freely live without the fear of taking a photo with some celebrity, or the public outlash of this example is even bad for them. They should also be striving towards building a country where they are also allowed to express themselves as they wish, even if they want to be friends with, I don't know, Russian businessmen or whatever. They should not be one party who controls everything. They can do whatever they want with their businesses, but let the country build itself, let it develop, let the people choose their own fate, their own future. Let us play in Euros with the players that we want to see. Also, this is a public sport. Football is for public exhibition, basically. And in most cases, there are players being given some minutes who might be not the best players, but they are still allowed to show up for the public, for the audience. But in this case, Budu Zivzivadze is just being benched without any play time. So let's hope that for tomorrow's game, he will at least have some minutes.
Yeah.
Yes, the public want to see him. There is there are some people staying in his home.
There was a friendly game with Montenegro before Euros, and TV Imedi, the government propaganda media, so we scored 3 goals. I think we won 3-1. They made cards of the 2 goals, but not the third goal that Budu scored.
Oh my!
You didn't know
they excluded his goal.
Yes, they didn't make it. So there was a joke that on Imedi we won 2-1.
Budu is being cancelled. Cancelled out from propaganda media, and now cancelled from the playtime.
Okay, we can finish on this positive
and hope we qualify for the next round, the round of
we wish good luck to the national teams, and tomorrow.
See you next week.
See you next week.
Bye.